Hello lovely people, welcome to another book chat, the weekly roundup of stuff I've read at some point in my past. I've got 3 things to talk about this week. Shall we dive into it?
Sophie Vlogs.
I want to start things off with a reread. I read Here Lies Arthur by Philip Reeve. This was a childhood favourite of mine, and because I've been getting really back into Arthurian literature, I thought I would give it a reread to see how I feel. This follows Gwynna. Essentially, the place where she is a servant that she lives is raided by Arthur and his band of knights. She ends up being discovered by Merlin, and he sort of adopts her and kind of uses her to help fulfill some of his schemes. She disguises herself as a boy in order to do this, and one thing I love about this is it's a portrayal of Arthur that is quite grounded in reality. Like, what actually would it have been like to be like a band of knights during this particular time? It's not like the noble tales that you might think of, like chivalry and that sort of thing. It's giving you like a realistic view, but what Merlin is doing is he's weaving these stories. It shows you that power of storytelling, and it really explores like the power that stories can have. So you get that delightful mix of like a slightly realistic portrayal of what it would have been like to be like a warlord in this time, mixed with these stories of enchantment. And because you're viewing it all through Gwynna's eyes, you get like the real look at it. But even she is sometimes like tempted by these stories, like she questions like, did I help do that, or did that really happen? And I love anything that really explores the power of storytelling. It's one of those topics that I think a lot of readers really like, so I really liked that aspect to this. There's also a bit of gender play going on because Gwynna is a girl who disguises herself as a boy. There is a boy in this who's disguised as a girl. There's this whole thing to do with like what are genders allowed to do at these times. I was worried that it would fall into that trap of like, being a girl is rubbish, being a boy is great. And I think whilst Gwynna has this adjustment from like boy to girl and not really enjoying it, I think it manages to do it in this way that acknowledges that like Gwynna's personal discomfort is not a reflection on like whether or not it's good to be a woman in general and do feminine things, so it didn't fall into that trap like I had feared it would, is what I'm saying. Essentially, I have so much affection for this, and that definitely influenced my reading. That said, I still think that this did hold up for me. I think it was doing a lot of really fun things in a way that is appropriate for like a children's middle grade audience. But I still really liked it. I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I have so much affection for it, and I'm really pleased that I didn't hate it. After that, I read a book on my Kindle. I did a buddy read with Aylin at Hidden in a Book. We read Empire of Sand by Tasha Suri. This is a fantasy world that is inspired by Mughal India. We follow Maya, who is living in the court of her father, who is governor of this place. She's his illegitimate daughter, so he had a relationship with an Amrithi woman, and Amrithi people are sort of the indigenous people of this place. They are quite persecuted. The emperor of this place really has it out for them, and so she is in many ways immensely well off because her father is governor and she lives a life of great privilege, but also on the outside because of this mixed blood that she has. I really loved the beginning of this story that was set in the governor's court because I found that status she had really interesting. There's this really gorgeous magic system that is based around dance. In the author interview at the end, Tasha Suri talked about how she didn't deliberately set out to make the magic system similar to Hindu dance, but she realised after she'd written it that she'd been so influenced by it, and I thought that whole magic system linked to dance was just such a wonderful idea that I've never read before, and I really enjoyed seeing that. Where this book ends up going is sort of like an arranged marriage plotline. For reasons, she's kind of like forced into this arranged marriage with this guy, and she leaves where she's grown up, and they go to this other place where there is this truly like awful foe. And then the sort of main plotline like follows from there. I think a lot of people really love this book. I think the pacing is not quite what I look for in fantasy. So it's a very much a character-based fantasy. It's quite a slow pacing. There's a lot of time that is spent like training and sort of focused on like the relationship between these two people who are in this arranged marriage, and then sort of like navigating the feelings for each other and stuff like this. Um, for me personally, I prefer my fantasies to just be like a little bit faster paced. Also, I say this all the time, a lot of the time when I read fantasies like this, I'm not super rooting for the romance in them. I think if you're someone who loves like slow burn romances and also like plot, like fantasy that is really immersed in character and that sort of thing, I can see that there will be so many people who will adore this book. I enjoyed the book. It's just, it definitely did get a little bit like stagnant in the pacing for me personally. I really liked the ending, however. I think the start and the end really worked for me, and the middle portion was just sort of like fine. The ending has some really great ideas, which I don't want to talk about because I don't want to spoil it, but I did really enjoy how it all came together. I think that this does such a good look at sort of like persecution of indigenous peoples. It's very much using like this fantasy setting to make a real point about the way that indigenous people in places are persecuted and are hunted and exploited and stuff like this. So I thought that that was a thread that was done really, really well. Essentially, I would say that I think that there is a real audience for this book. I'm not 100% that audience from like a pacing point of view, but I'm glad I read it, and I think that there are so many cool ideas here. I think the world is cool, and there's a lot that I like about it. After that is another reread. We're doing a lot of rereading. This is The World's Wife by Carol Ann Duffy. This is a poetry collection that is sort of like, all the poems are from the point of view of like, famous people's wives, whether that's like real people or like people from mythology, stuff like that. I loved this book when I was a teenager. I think I first read it when I was about 17. I read it in sixth form. I stole this book from my sixth form, actually, because I loved it so much that when I like left, I was like, I really want to take this book with me, and so then I just did. Who am I? God. I understand why I liked this. It's not quite my cup of tea anymore. I think that's mainly just because I've read a lot more like feminist literature and stuff like this. This was one of those first like feminist writing back kind of things that I read. Some of these poems do still really work for me. I think it's because there's like there's like a real undercurrent of like cynicism and that sort of thing at the heart, which is just kind of like not super my jam anymore. I really loved it when I first read it, and I think some of these are really strong in the way that they're like talking back against the original myth or like the original idea that we have. It's just not fully for me anymore. But that's fine, you know, we grow as readers, we change as readers, we like different things. I'm definitely glad I did a reread because I now feel more confident like in my perspective on it. But yeah, I've never actually read any other Carol Ann Duffy. That's everything I wanted to talk about this time. I would love to know if you've read any of these. If you have thoughts on any of them, please do leave a comment down below. Otherwise, I hope you're having a really lovely day, and I will see you next time for something different.